Welcome in, everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. This is Coast to Coast. We got everybody here today. How's it going, guys?
I'm doing okay.
It's going well. It's going well.
Yep.
Yesterday was long.
Yeah, I'll let you know after the college playoffs. Man, Texas, shit, man. God, it was a good game with Texas and Georgia. But God, it was a rough Saturday for me. I was really hoping we'd pull out that win. And I'll be honest with you, Pags and Bo and Stat Guy, when I was watching that game, I was telling Frankie I had flashbacks to the Cowboys because I've never seen 8 penalties in the first half. That reminded me of the Dallas Cowboys San Francisco game in the playoffs when they just had a mess load of penalties. And I was like, God, I watched the Cowboys all over again. But in any event, we're still in the playoffs. I think we dropped down to the number 3 spot. So I guess we'll live to fight another day.
Yeah, I mean, as long
who
as you
went
get
number
in, right?
Who's number 2?
Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia.
I tell you, I was surprised to see Penn State score as many points as they did.
Yeah, they did.
Mm-hmm.
I was really surprised about that.
But I did tell you guys on Friday that Alabama was going to get bumped.
Well, the only way that they got bumped, the reason why they got bumped was because friggin' Clemson.
Yep,
Yeah.
and that's what was going to go against Georgia. It was that conference not being in the conference championship game. If SMU would have beaten Clemson, Alabama gets in. If Georgia would have lost to Texas and SMU beats Clemson, Georgia and Alabama both would have got in with 3 losses. It's the fact that Alabama did not play in the conference championship game. Clemson won the conference championship game, so with them having 3 losses, they had no choice but to bump Alabama because of the new playoff rules.
I think that's who Texas has in the first round. I think we played Clemson in that first round of the playoffs. That's huge.
Well,
Who's going to win?
I think that, I'm not a Clemson fan either. So.
Oh, no.
And Rob, I had them at 9-7, not 7-9, or 7-10. I had them at 9-8, rather.
But hey, if I had to predict that, I would not be surprised if Texas and Georgia had a 3-peat for the national title because honestly, Georgia is at the complete opposite end of who we're playing. So, I mean, the teams we got to go through is what Clemson and I forget the other 2. I think Ohio State plays somebody, but I mean the road to the national title for Texas is very palatable.
You have the easiest road to get to the semifinal.
Yeah,
You have Clemson first, and if you beat Clemson, then you get Arizona State in the quarterfinal.
Yeah. I mean, and I can't imagine Georgia not being in the national title. I don't know who on that other side. I mean, Oregon, that's going to be the one, right?
Well, Georgia would have the winner of Indiana and Notre Dame.
Right.
And then if they win that game, then they would have the winner of most likely Penn State and Boise State. So Georgia would probably have Penn State, which that might be a tougher game for Georgia.
Hey, what's going on with the head coach of Notre Dame? What's going on with his hair? Did anybody notice his hair looked like it was painted on? Or is it just me?
Just you.
From Marcus
No,
Freeman?
I mean, go back and watch that interview. No, seriously, go back and watch that interview. It looks like the damn dude's hair is like paint, like wet paint.
That's just his hairstyle.
The hair in
Is
the
that
can.
hair color?
Yeah, that's just how his hair looks like on a regular basis. Marcus Freeman.
Boy, I tell you what, man, that looked interesting to me.
Hey,
Okay.
Rob. I mean, you got 3 different things here.
Right?
Chill down, relax.
Rob, man, you're
wean
all
off the Adderall a little bit. You took too much Adderall today. Like bam, bam, bam. It's like
we'll get to all those topics, but man, you're all over the place.
Were you guys surprised with how the top 4 seeds ended in college football, though? Outside of the top 2, because you knew Oregon and Georgia were going to be 1 and 2. But 3 and 4, were you surprised that they gave it to Boise State and Arizona State? Knowing how weak Boise State's conference is, knowing the same thing with Arizona State, they had 2 losses, but
no.
I
think that's part of what's got to happen.
I would have put Texas at 4. I would have dropped Texas 2-4. I would not have put Texas at 5, and then Notre Dame, I thought they might push to number 3 just because Notre Dame.
I thought that was guaranteed that if you won a conference, you're getting a top 4 seed.
That was the thing, though. That's how Clemson falls into the mix, though, because the Mountain West is not considered a Power 5 conference.
Yeah, but out of the 5 conferences, they're going to give 4 top. 4.
Yeah, that's why I thought Clemson might somehow get number 4 because of the ACC.
Yeah, well, no.
Yeah, that's why I kind of was like, well, I figured Arizona State would get it just because they won the Big 12. But then I honestly thought, well, would you put Boise State over Clemson, knowing the strength of the ACC as opposed to the Mountain West? If not, then I kind of thought Texas would still get that number 4 because both their losses came.
Yeah, but Boise State has actually been perennial in terms of getting, like they've won
Mhm.
some pretty major bowl games.
And their only loss this year was week 2 against Oregon on a last-second field goal that had Oregon win 35-34. So
Yeah.
Boise State actually was really, outside of the Penn State and Ohio State game, Boise State has come the closest to knocking off Oregon.
So this makes more sense. I thought you were just like on super ADD mode, but okay.
Me too. That's what I was. I'm like, damn. He's like, bam.
Yeah, that was a good game though. That was a good game.
A lot better game than I expected it to be. I was surprised that Penn State was able to handle.
They gave them everything they could. I mean,
they were really a stop away from being able to bring it to time. I don't understand why he went for 2. First off, why go for fucking 2?
Yeah.
well, yeah.
At any point.
It was that pick that was almost a pick 6 early
Mhm.
that really kind of gave them that buffer the rest of the game.
Right, because they were going back and forth. I mean, I think doing that again, and then of course there was an interception at the end, right? Like it was, which I thought was a bad pass all the way around. That was a bad mistake that he made. Like the first interception, the guy had a good read. The second interception was just it was a mistake.
And like the tough part about that too is, had Penn State won that game, they would have been the number 1 seed.
Yep.
And that ultimately could have changed how the college football playoff would have looked for them, because now as a number 1 seed, you get the first round bye, and then potentially your matchup's going to be easier in the quarterfinal that can set you up for the semifinal. Now you're probably going to beat SMU, but now who knows what's going to happen in that quarterfinal game based on who wins the other seeds. You could
I
end
don't
up
know that
going,
they're going to beat SMU.
you could end up going. The only reason why I say they will is because of the weather, because weather is going to play a factor in Penn State.
Yeah, I guess cold. I mean,
It's supposed to be cold with possible snow showers. That will play a factor, and Penn State has a better running game than what SMU does.
I do like hearing that SMU is back in the mix of things. You know what I mean? I grew up being an SMU fan. Like I was I was my college team, and then they gave them the
No, they did not, Joe.
the death, the death ban. So it was like,
Had they won more games, they would have deserved it.
They didn't deserve to be in the playoffs for 2 reasons. They did not win their conference, and they did not play in the conference championship game. If you're not in a conference championship game, you're not getting into the college football playoffs. You're just not. Unless, obviously, you have 2 losses, kind of like Tennessee did, because they only had 2 losses. Bama had 3. But if
or you're
not,
Notre Dame.
Yeah, well, they had the 1 loss. But outside of that, like every other team, for the most part, that's in the college football playoffs, either had 2 losses compared to Alabama's 3, or they played in the conference championship game.
So here's the question. Here's another question. Had Army beaten Notre Dame, would Army be in?
They said that yesterday. If Army beat Notre Dame, they would have had the 10 seed.
That would have been
No,
awesome.
they basically came. And the sad part is, if Army would have beat Notre Dame, they came flat out and said that Army not only would have been the number 10, but Notre Dame would have been out. Like
Right.
that was Notre Dame's game to basically get them in, because if they would have somehow lost to that game, they would have been out. And then Army would have been the 10 seed regardless what would have happened this week.
I would have loved, not for nothing, I would have loved to watch Army beat Notre Dame and Army to win the championship there. They'd have been put in the playoffs already.
It wouldn't matter what happens against Navy.
And then Navy beat them.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they would have beat Notre Dame and then they would have won their conference championship, which they did, they would have been the number 10 seed. So regardless of what would have happened with Navy this upcoming weekend, they would have still been in that college football playoff.
Makes you wonder if they would have not played that game.
No, they still would have, because
there's no way they skipped
they
that
still
game.
would have, just because of the trophy that's always presented for that game and just what that game means. Like, there's a reason why the college football playoff doesn't start until next weekend. It's because the Army-Navy game is the only college game that goes on this weekend besides the FCS playoffs. Like, they make sure that Army-Navy game is everybody's focus for the FBS this weekend.
Right. No, and I get that. And it's like it is one of the most expensive tickets to get in college football in general.
Huh.
So, I mean, I was looking for a ticket.
I'll tell you what. If it's anything like what Texas A&M was charging, man, because that $2,500 and $850 for a nosebleed. If Army and Navy is charging that,
it's probably gonna be more than that.
I mean, damn,
it was $1,200 for a nosebleed.
Yeah,
for Army Navy, $1,200. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
On the plus side, you can go watch your Cowboys for like $30.
$30? Well, shit, I fucking overpaid, man. Fuck.
But anyways, but the Eagles won, and to answer Robert's question about the Eagles, I said that I thought this was going to be it wasn't a trap game. I thought that the Eagles were going to win. I thought we would score more points, actually. So I was surprised that they didn't. I feel like that they absolutely were looking ahead. But good teams look ahead and still win the games they need to. Again, like, after watching that, and I watched literally 3 minutes of football. Other than that, in that 3 minutes of football, I watched the Chargers miss hitting Patrick Mahomes, and there he passing it to a guy on his knees named Travis Kelce.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you know what? I was kind of wishing, like, because they're showing Andy Reid there, and the clock is ticking down, and I wish Andy Reid had to go sneeze right with like 1 second left.
Well, no, I think if you watch closely, though, he was standing next to the referee, and I think he said, I'm calling the timeout at 1 second. So, like, sometimes if you tell sometimes if you tell the ref you're going to call a timeout at 1 second, like, the ref sometimes gives you the benefit of the doubt. Even if you don't do this, sometimes the ref will be like, he called timeout, but he just wanted me to blow the whistle at this point.
So, but, like, he sneezes. He's like, time. Oh, shoot. Oh, damn, they blew it.
I mean, either that or, do the
He
Bears.
almost shanked it.
Exactly. Do the Bears where it goes off the upright rather than banking through. That was the most KC win, though, right? It comes down to a lucky bounce.
The fourth kicker of the year.
Yeah, like it's,
the fourth kicker of the year who can't even take kickoffs because he can't even kick the ball 55 yards. They have the safety taking their kickoffs right now because their kicker. He does. He used to play soccer in college. Like, he's got a hell of a leg, but like the kicker they have now, like they were talking about it last night, like anything under like 48 yards, he was one of the most accurate kickers in college history. He does not have the leg to kick 55 yards. So when you start getting into that 50-yard field goal range, it's just like, do we trot him out there or do we just go for it?
Well, no, they got Matt Ariza who can punt 95 yards.
But he's never kicked a field goal though. They got the guy right now. They just basically have just for the next 2 weeks until Butker can come back, but his leg isn't that great. That's why when I saw the safety taking kickoffs, I'm like, Jesus, that's not good for Kansas City if they get into a long field goal situation late.
No, I mean, you just go for it. Like at least you know what it is.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, he can make it, but he's inaccurate, whatever. It's just like, oh, he just doesn't have a cannon for a leg. It helps the decision. You're just like, oh, I mean, it's not even going to make it to the crossbar. Let's go ahead and go for it on 4.
Well, who was it that kicked a 68-yard field goal and missed by like a yard? Like, it was that close.
Yesterday?
I don't know if it was yesterday or last week.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, it was like a 68-yarder to win the game, and it came up just short.
Wow!
And like literally, like just like it didn't graze the bar, but it was close enough that you had to look at it to see if it grazed it.
Wait, 68 yards.
Oh, wow.
That's the wrong way away.
Well, that's like the Clemson kicker that won the game against SMU on Saturday. He's kicked 5 field goals all year because he's not technically their field goal kicker, but he's like their long range kicker. So anytime there's a field goal 55 yards or more, they bring that kicker out there and he's 5 for 5 over 55 yards. Because
Who's
he's
this?
got like the Clemson kicker on Saturday that won the game against SMU. He's not their actual kicker. Like they have two kickers. They have their regular place kicker who does pretty much everything 52 yards and in. And then they have this guy that they bring out there for 55 yards and over. He's 5 for 5 and kicks over 55 yards. And then he made that 57-yarder on Saturday.
That's crazy.
Like he's their distance kicker. They have their accurate kicker, and then they got this guy they just bring out for their distance.
I mean, sounds like dude's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, 5 for 5 over
mean,
55
yeah.
yards, but I'm just like, I'm surprised there isn't more. Well, I mean, NFL kickers nowadays can just boom the football, but like guys like Cairo Santos and some of these kickers that have a hard time kicking it over 52 yards, I'm surprised you don't have more NFL teams that have like that setup where you have your regular accurate kicker for certain lengths, and then you just bring a guy out who's got the big leg for anything over like a certain distance.
But if he's making it at 55, why couldn't he make it at 40 or 35 or whatever? I mean, what's the?
Because he's a freshman. The other guy's a senior. Like there's.
I understand. I mean, whatever your class is, but I mean,
No, but he's like a senior there. He's been there all year. They're not going to just sit that senior kicker now just for a freshman. They just know that he doesn't have the best leg. But when Clemson's at their best, they don't kick a lot of field goals anyways. It's more touchdowns and short field goals, so you don't need a guy that can kick the ball deep typically.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
And, who knows? They actually seemed like they were calling that game fairly evenly.
Yeah.
So,
And you can't call pass interference on that play because there was nobody even around Travis Kelce. Like he was like
No,
wide open by like 3 yards.
it would have been like a defensive holding if they were going to fabricate something because
they called defensive holding on a run play in my game.
Yeah, they did. I saw that.
I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I think that's what they showed me on TV actually, because I'm like, I'm like yelling. I'm like, it was a run play. There was not even a pass. How do you have defensive holding on a run play?
We had the same thing in the Minnesota game on a Bijan Robinson carry where he went between the tackles and Minnesota's linebacker grabbed the tight end like behind the shoulder pads and pulled him forward, and they called defensive holding. I'm like, okay. It's a run play. I don't really know how you can yell at a defender for like taking his offensive lineman and trying to throw him out of the way, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was one of those on I forget what team it was. The defensive lineman basically submarined under two offensive linemen. He got defensive holding also. I'm like, I feel like that's not a real thing.
Has that ever been called? Has that ever been called as much in the past as it has been this year? Because I've like obviously defensive holding on the secondary and like on a linebacker who might be covering on a linebacker, but I've never seen defensive holding be called on defensive linemen before this year, especially on a running play.
I mean, there's been some, but not like it was this week. Like this week, it seemed like there was a lot of them.
Because like your job as a defensive lineman is to like get your defender out of the way to get the ball carrier. So if you got the offensive lineman by the shoulder pads and you throw him to the ground, like I don't know how you can call holding on that because that's literally what you're taught to do.
Well, I mean, if you get your hands to the outside and if you hook them, you can get holding calls. They don't generally do it on defensive linemen the way they do offensive, but they were today or this weekend. So it was interesting the amount of defensive holding calls on linemen specifically.
Well, there you have it, and there you have it. So, and I was surprised to see. I thought Atlanta would give a better game.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I'm on board with signing Sam Darnold long term after yesterday. He's showing why he was the number 3 pick, and it's what Kevin O'Connell said yesterday, and he made a good point.
Well, it's good to see that you're finally a Vikings fan again. You got your little moniker there on the screen.
Well, Kevin O'Connell made a good point. I'm interested to see what happens with Daniel Jones next year if he remains in Minnesota beyond this year. He basically said young quarterbacks don't fail organizations. Organizations fail young quarterbacks. And Sam Darnold is a classic case of he went to the Jets organization who failed him in New York, and he was never really able to get another opportunity until this year. And he got that opportunity, and he is playing lights out right now. I mean, you look at Minnesota though, with all the great teams they've had, like when they had Randy Moss and Chris Carter for all those years together, and when they had Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, and just kind of the wide receiver duos that Minnesota's had in the past.
Sure.
Yesterday was the first time in Minnesota Vikings history that they had two receivers with at least 130 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns in the same game. And they've had so many good receivers in Minnesota, and what they did yesterday has never been done before. And now, the last 3 weeks, Sam Darnold has over 600 yards passing in the fourth quarter with 8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in the last fourth quarters. The guy's been clutch when you needed him to be.
Yeah.
It was 21-21 heading into the fourth quarter yesterday, and then he goes 12 for 13 for 147 yards and 3 TDs in the fourth quarter.
I know. I jumped on TikTok or Instagram this morning, and the first thing I saw was, is there a new best wide receiver duo in the league? 2 receivers from Addison and Jefferson both had 130 yards receiving. Who gives a shit? You know what I mean?
With Joe's comment right there, I kind of had Atlanta winning also because I thought Kirk Cousins was going to come out and throw Minnesota to death for the most part. But it got to a point in the game where Minnesota knew that if they could blitz Cousins, Atlanta had no shot. And the last 18 passes that Cousins threw, they blitzed at least 4 pass rushers on 15 of those 18 passes, and they just crushed Kirk Cousins in the fourth quarter. It just got to the point where I think Atlanta gave up. It's well, this is going to end badly.
Yeah, I didn't think Atlanta was winning that game.
Because when it was 21-21 midway through the third quarter, and realistically, Kirk Cousins was outplaying Sam Darnold at that point. But then it became a case of Brian Flores just said, we're just going to blitz the shit out of Kirk Cousins and make him beat us. And once he started to get hit in the pocket, it was over. It was yep, we're going to just force him to throw sooner than he wants to throw. And then Atlanta's yep, it's over.
Didn't they put in Penix?
They actually were talking about it. Raheem Morris said, we thought about putting Penix in late, but at this point, we're not going to commit to Penix yet because we're not eliminated from playoff contention.
But if you put a guy like Penix in, who obviously is not really a runner because of the knees and injuries he's sustained.
He's more mobile than Cousins, though.
But do you think so? I mean, if he's written blitzed, I don't know.
He's not mobile in terms of he'll tuck it and run. He's got a lot more pocket mobility. So when Cousins is getting blitzed in the pocket, he panics and will just fire the ball up, or he'll take the shot or get hit in the pocket. At least Penix has that pocket mobility where he can step up and kind of roll to the outside a little bit to clear up a throwing lane. That's what they mean by the Penix mobility. He's mobile enough to avoid the pressure in the pocket.
Because that's always been kind of the knack on him, is that he couldn't scramble. If he can't scramble, and you got blitzes coming in, and he hasn't played all year. I mean, so he's got to get you. I don't know. I just don't think that would have been a recipe for success. I mean, I think Penix is going to be a good quarterback. I don't think that would have been a good situation to throw him into, though.
So, beyond all of that, we might as well bring up the new guy who's got $750 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell you,
Huge
the
signing.
first thing,
Jeez.
the first thing that I saw, again, was the first Instagram that I saw about that was a Yankees fan who drove all the way over to Citi Field, and he was talking about how Citi Field's in a trashy neighborhood. I'm like, hold on. You have been to Yankee Stadium, right? Just want to make sure that you understand that, and that every Yankees fan, and he's just a money hungry bitch, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I love having Yankees fans cry. Wah, you guys lost. Wah. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, Yankees fans. You guys suck. No, he didn't want to be on your team. He chose against you.
I was going to say, when you saw the offer the Yankees gave him, it basically showed that he didn't want to be a Yankee anymore because the Yankees offered him one more year for $5 million less. It was 16 years at $760 as opposed to 15 years at $765, which I really don't think that $5 million made that much of a difference. That just goes to show that he didn't want to stay in New York. Well,
But
he did, but he didn't want to stay with the
performance
Yankees.
incentives. There are performances. He can actually go above 800.
But I'm just saying, like, that Yankees offer was basically the same offer the Mets gave him, a $5 million difference. But at that point, it just goes to show you that he didn't want to be
How
a
many
Yankee.
opt-outs does he have?
I don't think he has any.
No, he can opt out after the 2029 season.
So it's what, 5 years?
Yeah, he can opt out after 5 and go for another big contract.
All I know is it has no deferred money.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all, and that's not deferred money like everybody else that signs with the Dodgers.
Hey, Frank, I don't care, Frank. I don't give a shit, Frank. You guys lost. You guys lost your big piece. You got Judge and you had Soto, who actually did something in the playoffs, unlike Judge. So guess what? Now he's gone, and your Yankee people are crying. They're crying. Wah, he went somewhere else. I love it. I love it.
Just
so
like
much.
the Pags woke up and chose violence this morning.
Hey, somebody peed in his Cheerios big time, and he went to binge.
I nobody peed in my Cheerios. I'm having a great day.
He's having a great day. The Eagles won. Everybody's having a good day.
What do you mean I have heartburn, still can't win? Hold on. You guys have won since some year after we won. What are you talking about, you dumb piece of shit? Don't even fucking get started with me. I'll come after you today. I'll come after you there, Frankie. You were in the World Series this year. Guess what? Smacked. At least we gave a series to Houston. You couldn't even put up a series with the Dodgers. So shut your fucking ass, bitch.
But if Frankie was here, he would also tell you, you didn't even make the playoffs this year. So what the fuck are you talking about? Sit in your fucking corner and cry about somebody else. If Frankie was here, that's what he would say. I just tell you.
For who?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm having a great day. I saw that. And truth about that, Frankie, I love you, Frankie. So it's not a matter of that. But the guy who I saw on Instagram, he was definitely a punch the face. He was and just when and everybody who has a Soto jersey and Yankee Soto jersey should just burn it. He is a money hungry bitch and blah blah blah. I'm like, shut the fuck up. You would take that money too.
I was just about to say, if someone gives you $765 million, you're not going to take it.
You go.
Like,
absolutely.
Of course.
And of course, if you have some steam you need to blow off, you can do it right here at True Fusion Gym. Get a free 5-day pass with the QR code on the screen. Pilates, boot camp, yoga, namaste, try and calm down a little bit. Find your edge at True Fusion Gym.
But see, I just want to go to the bar.
Oh, man. And of course,
if you want to get your blood pressure up, make sure to go to BetUS, where you can get 125% bonus and also 10% of your money back when you bet the Yankees to win the World Series and they get their asses stomped. You can get 10% of that back.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
That seemed like the easiest time to do our segment.
Did you I just sent you the thing about Ben Johnson. Did you hear those comments after Thursday's win against the Packers? And that kind of leads you to wonder what he's thinking for head coaching openings next year. Because if you kind of look at those comments, if you look at those comments, it makes me feel like he might stay in Detroit another year if he doesn't go into the right situation. Because he's basically saying any team that he goes to, he wants his contract and the GM's contract to link together. Which means if you're signing Ben Johnson to a 5-year deal, that GM better have a 5-year contract as well. Because if that GM's only on a 3-year deal and he gets fired after 3 years, that new GM could come in and then fire Ben Johnson. So he's basically saying any job that I'm interviewing for, if you hire me, that GM and my contract better be intertwined together. Otherwise, I'm not taking it, which leads me to believe he might not be leaving Detroit this year.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for him is he's sought after enough that he doesn't have to settle for a job.
Yeah,
You know what? As you're thinking about it, as you're saying that, the Giants is the first team that come to my mind.
What, to
That
try and get him?
they would fire
Oh,
both
Jay
the
Shane.
GM
Yep.
and the coach. And Frankie, truth of the matter is, Frankie, you're right about that. Yeah, that we will have to face some more, but they're the Mets. And what they do is they Mets it up. Now they played their World Series against us this season, and they won in this playoffs, and they beat us. Yes, they did. And and then they did what they do and Metsed it up against the Dodgers when I wanted them to beat the Dodgers. I loved a Subway Series rather than the Dodgers beating. I hate the Dodgers more than I hate the Yankees. I hate the Dodgers more than I hate the Yankees. And I'm leaving it up to you guys. Like I said, I hate the Yankees, but I would rather the Yankees win rather than the Dodgers. And everybody on that team decided they couldn't freaking hit the ball.
I know it wasn't necessarily that. It's also they decided they couldn't field either.
So
yeah, they just didn't play baseball anymore.
They forgot that they had to get ground balls to get out of innings.
Right, or catch balls.
Or Garrett Cole forgot to run to first base.
Yeah, I mean, it just it reminded me a lot of Major League. When the movie starts, when they just can't do anything, like that was the Yankees in the series.
Well, that was the Yankees. At least in that one inning, they were up 5-1.
I know.
Tell you. Well, anyways.
Wow, dang, you make my butt stay.
Exactly. Just a bit outside.
You trying to tell me that Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?
Man, love that movie.
Yeah, but not like you said with the Giants, possibly like moving on from Dable and Jay Shane for the GM and whatnot.
Sure.
The Bears were the other job that came to mind for Ben Johnson, and a lot of people kind of said Ryan Poles was on the hot seat, especially after not really addressing the offensive line. But right now, they're also saying that Ryan Poles might get an extension. If they give Ryan Poles that extension, I do think Ben Johnson ends up in Chicago because the only way you're giving him that extension is if you already know who your next head coach is going to be. Otherwise, you're not giving him.
Do you want to go up against the team that you know is?
I would, because you know so much about that team and that offensive scheme that you've created in Detroit. Who knows what that scheme is going to look like after you leave? Because who knows?
I could see him going. Realistically, I could see him going to the Jags.
I could.
No. I think that there's a better chance of him going to
Giants or the Jets.
I mean,
nobody wants those jobs.
But you got to remember, the Jets don't have a GM right now. So the Jets are going to be looking for a new GM next year.
That team is a dumpster fire, though.
No, it is. I guarantee that if Ben Johnson goes there, he's not keeping Aaron Rodgers, or he's not going to want to keep Aaron Rodgers. That's why you get a new GM in New York for the Jets, you link his contract up with Johnson.
He said before that he wanted somewhere that had a young quarterback already. He said that about a month ago.
but he could choose.
He could
his young quarterback.
He could
there.
draft Shedeur Sanders. He could draft.
Yeah, I mean they're not going to get the first pick in the draft. That's going to be the Giants.
Yeah. He could draft Cam Ward. He could draft Dylan Gabriel. He could draft any one of the college quarterbacks coming out this year. Or if you go, that's why Chicago makes sense too because of Caleb. He's a young quarterback.
No. The Bears make sense, and the Jags make sense. That both the New York teams, there's so much wrong with those teams.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Do you think, could you see Ben Johnson possibly going to San Francisco depending on what happens with Shanahan?
Do you really think they're going to fire Shanahan?
Did you watch any of that game yesterday?
Yeah.
There was more talks about the Bears are going to try to trade for Kyle Shanahan, which that makes a ton of sense because then the 49ers can get draft capital out of it.
What, third round pick?
No, it'd be the Bears said they would do 2 seconds and a third for Shanahan.
What?
Yeah, the Bears said they would give up 2 second-round picks because they have those extra.
Bears. You
got to remember though. You got to remember the Bears have 3 second-round picks next year because 2 of them are from Carolina yet. So they can essentially just get rid of Carolina's second-round picks, and they would still have their own second-round pick plus a
Are
third
you
round
out
pick.
of your goddamn mind? I would
That's
absolutely not do that.
It's the
Maybe
Bears.
give him 1 second-round pick.
That's the Bears, though.
It's the Bears. They do dumb shit like that.
That's
They'll
why I
probably
said.
find a way
That's
to give
why.
up 2 1s just for the hell of it.
That's why I think if the Bears end up trading for Shanahan, John Lynch still has 4 years left on his GM contract because he signed that extension last year. Ben Johnson going to San Francisco with that offense makes a perfect fit because you have a young Brock Purdy, you still have Deebo Samuel, you still have Brandon Ayuk, you still have Kittle. You just got to figure out what you're going to do at running back, knowing that McCaffrey's got his issues now and that Jordan Mason's got the torn ACL. But that offensive system, I think, would fit Ben Johnson very well in San Francisco.
Well, I mean, yeah.
And yes, when
would like
yes, when you can. The last time it was done, I believe, was the Raiders in Tampa Bay trading John Gruden.
Yeah.
About to say,
And
yeah,
then
John Gruden
the
was part
first
of
one
that.
was what, Belichick, right?
Yep.
So
Belichick was traded to the Patriots.
Yes.
yeah, it was a first rounder.
Got
Oh,
it.
that worked out in the Patriots' favor.
Yeah, they did just
I
fine.
thought he left. I thought he was supposed to be with
Yeah,
the
I
Jets.
thought he quit.
It was for the rights. It was
Yeah.
the rights to have him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it has been a while. There hasn't been really a coach that's been worthy.
There's been 5 cases where that's happened. You had Belichick to the Jets, Gruden from the Raiders to Tampa. Herm Edwards was traded from the Jets to Kansas City in 2006.
Hmm.
Mike Holmgren was traded from the Packers to the Seahawks in 99.
Well, and Sean Payton actually was traded also, right? Like he still had
Yeah.
ties to the Saints.
Yep. And then Bill Parcells was Patriots to the Jets in 97, and then Sean Payton.
I am.
Huh.
So Sean Payton was realistically the last coach that was traded for, which
Yeah, because what they gave up a 1 for him also.
they gave up a first and a fifth.
So
But at first and a fifth for Sean Payton. I mean, he's a good coach. I mean, that seems realistic. But 2 1s or 3
winning.
or whatever, I don't know.
I mean,
That's
you
even
can't
much.
hate on what the Broncos are doing this year.
I guess you can say that the Broncos made the right call going with Bo Nix though too.
No question. Well, I mean, that was a no-brainer anyway because Peyton clearly hated Wilson.
Well, it
there
wasn't that like you could have signed a
was there that did not work.
you could have signed a free agent quarterback though if they wanted to, but Denver's like, no, we want to reset and get a young quarterback. They could have traded up in the draft to try to get somebody else, but they waited to see who was left when they picked, and Bo Nix was left, and it's worked out in their favor.
No, for sure. I don't know what you could have done in free agency because they didn't have the money to go get a guy. Like
Daniel
they-
Jones.
Well, now, sure, but ahead of this year.
Yeah,
So, well, yeah, I don't think he would have liked Daniel Jones either.
we're not going to have to do that. We're not going to have to do that because O'Connell's going to get a nice extension after this year's over.
So
I-
let me ask this
This
question:
would be hilarious.
if the Vikings beat the Lions, do they become the number one? They don't become the number 1 seed. They actually just
Would they win the division?
they would win
If
the division.
they have the same record heading into that week. Now, if the Lions lose to Buffalo next Sunday, which they could, and both teams are sitting at 11, or both teams are sitting at 14-2 or whatever, heading into that final week of the regular season, and the Vikings win that game, then they win the division.
of
but it all-
course.
But then it all depends on if the Lions are sitting with 2 losses and the Vikings have 3, because I still think the Vikings are going to lose one game like before they get to. I think the Vikings lose to Green Bay in Week 16 just because those teams always split. It doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter where they are in the standings.
2 weeks.
They always split. So if the Lions lose to Detroit, or if the Lions lose to Buffalo to get to 2 losses, and then the Vikings lose to the Packers to get to 3 losses, and then the Vikings beat the Lions in Week 18 to both end up with 3 losses, it goes down to who has the better division record at that point. And Detroit would win the division at that point because that would be their only loss inside the division. So it's going to come down to I think the last 2 weeks of the regular season to determine who wins that division.
So what you're saying is you guys are going to be a wild card team.
And yes, Frankie, I did know.
I just don't think Minnesota's playing well, and so is Detroit. I just think it's going to be too difficult for Minnesota to win out when you look at those last 2 weeks. Having to go to Detroit and having Green Bay those last 2 weeks. It's going to be very difficult for Minnesota to go 2-0 in those 2 games. as well as Minnesota's playing right now, because Green Bay is going to be playing for obviously
Because
seeding
they're going to be the. I was going to say they're going to be the number 4, the number 5.
number 5 or the number 6. Because Green Bay is the number 6 seed right now.
Yeah, but what are they? 1 game behind or 2 games?
Technically, they're 2 games behind in the loss column, but because Minnesota beat them in week 4, they're technically 3 games behind.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's going to be.
But you got to look at Washington though, because Washington's only 1 game behind Green Bay. Green Bay wants to stay ahead of Washington so they can avoid Philly in that first round. That's why Green Bay is going to be playing for basically that number 6 seed in week 17, and then Minnesota, depending on what happens with Detroit.
Washington's not going to beat Philly again. So I'm not really concerned about that. Only reason why I'm looking at it is I think that we hold the tiebreaker against Minnesota. We do not hold the tiebreaker against Detroit.
Yeah.
And that's why I am interested to hear about the fact that that's week 17 means that those guys would all have to play.
Yeah, because right now Minnesota's got Chicago on Monday night next week, which it should be a win, but Chicago has played Minnesota tough. They played basically the entire NFC North.
It's conference. It's conference.
Yeah. So, I mean, that could be a loss. The week after that, they go to Seattle, which Minnesota has historically struggled at Seattle. So that's not going to be an easy win for them there. And then
our defense has played a lot better over the last 3 weeks.
And then they got Green Bay and Detroit to finish out the year. That's why if Minnesota can win the next 2 weeks to get to 13-2, those last 2 weeks, I just don't see them being able to beat both Green Bay and Detroit. They're going to lose one of those last 2 games. It's just a matter of which one they lose.
And Kansas City is not going to get to the Super Bowl. They are not going to get to the Super Bowl. I'm telling you, that ain't happening. As much as they want Taylor to be there again,
they may not. Yeah, they may not get to the Super Bowl, but now the freaking playoffs have to go through Kansas City again after Buffalo laid their egg yesterday.
Yeah.
Buffalo blew it.
They lost to the Rams 44-42.
Really?
So the score was not indicative of
the Rams were up by 21 at one point in the second half. They were up by 17 in the third quarter. It took like Buffalo basically doing everything they could to get themselves back into the game. They just ran out of time.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, a cross-country flight going from Buffalo to Los Angeles and spotting Matthew Stafford a 17-point lead. You're not doing yourself any favor at that point.
It's that second part. Like, you can't spot Stafford 17 points.
Yeah.
Like, he's a good enough quarterback.
Yeah.
You know, any of those upper echelon guys, you can't front them that many points and expect to win.
Like Josh Allen made history yesterday. He became the first or second quarterback in NFL history to have 3 rushing touchdowns and 3 passing touchdowns in the same game. Like, he played well. It's the fact that it was 7-7, and all of a sudden, before you know it, it's 24-7 Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, their defense just came up short for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, Allen was playing out of his mind. In fact, if there was ever a game that was really pushed him to the front of the MVP race, it was that.
Yeah, like he did his part to win. It's just Seattle's like the only team that I know of that does well on the cross-country flights. Like, when they go from the West Coast to the East Coast, they always play well. But whenever these East Coast teams go out West, for whatever reason, that first half, they just shit the bed completely in the first half.
I don't know. The Eagles didn't do that.
No, Eagles didn't do that. But, Buffalo, this was the one game that I think a lot of – I'm not going to say it just because the Rams have been playing better since both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua came back. But you have to wonder.
It's crazy when you have your players come back. How better you play.
Except when they played the Eagles.
But you have to wonder. You have to wonder if Buffalo maybe looked past the Rams a little bit, knowing that they have Detroit next week.
I mean, I feel like they're the Starship Troopers meme where it's like, I did my part, and then their defense is like, I didn't do shit.
Hey, listen, guys, I'm going to head out right now. I will be back on tomorrow, so
cool.
We'll be doing our thing. But yeah, I got to roll right now, guys. So no more tobacco products to be on this.
That's all right. He'll go back to hating the Vikings in the next 2 weeks when they lose a couple games.
That's exactly correct.
I'm good. I'm good with where they are. If they lose out, I'll be upset, but they'll still be in the playoffs. I'll be fine.
Hey,
actually, there's still a chance for them not to make the playoffs.
If they lose out, they're out of the playoffs.
No, if the Rams lose one more game, Minnesota's in no matter what happens. Because Cardinals have 7 losses, we beat the Cardinals. Everybody else has 7 losses that we beat. It's the Rams that have 6. The worst that we can do is go 11-6. So if we lose out, all the Rams have to do is lose one more game and we get in. That's really the only way that we can't get in is if the Rams lose out. Because Tampa Bay right now is 6-6. If they lose one more game, they end up with
Would be kind of funny.
They're 7-6 actually.
Tampa Bay 7-6.
7-6.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
so
are.
7-6. If Tampa Bay loses one more game, that gets them to 7 losses. Then they'll have more losses than us, no matter what.
Yeah,
they
but the
do.
problem is they'll win the division because there's no.
Well, that's what I'm
chance.
saying though, because if Atlanta and Tampa Bay both go 10-7, we have the tiebreaker over Atlanta. So if they don't win the division, they're out. We have the tiebreaker over Arizona, who can end up like with 7 losses. The only team
Well,
that can knock us out,
Arizona's done.
Yeah.
Anyway.
but the only team that can knock us out is the Rams, and they have it.
Well, I can talk about this all tomorrow, guys.
Yep.
I'll see us.
Take it easy.
That's why when they showed this morning that there's only 4 teams that have actually clinched a playoff spot right now: the Eagles, the Lions, the Chiefs, and is it the Bills? Yeah, because the Bills won the division. Yeah, so those are the only 4 teams that clinched. I basically said no, 5 teams clinched because I don't see Minnesota losing out, and I don't see the Rams winning out, and that's really the only way that Minnesota does not get in is if they lose out and if the Rams win out. I mean, stranger things have happened, but. Stranger things have happened in the NFL, so yes, there is that possibility that could happen.
Yep.
But
Yep.
with the Rams having to play the 49ers this Thursday,
So the Rams actually have 3 of their last 4 in division.
that's the thing. Like
That is brutal. And
That's
they finished
why-
the Seahawks.
that's why I don't see the Rams winning out. They could go 3-1, but that one loss, whether it happens week 17, 16, or if it happens on Thursday night, that loss, Minnesota clinches.
Yeah, see, for Seattle, they need to go at a minimum. They have to go 2-2, and one of their wins has to be the final game of the season against the Rams, and they win the division because now they have obviously Arizona's basically out of it, right? And the Niners, the Seahawks would have if they were to end up with the same record, the Seahawks have more division wins. And so the Rams are the ones that can really mess this up. So
You're going to go 2-2 because you're going to beat the Bears whenever you play the Bears.
So that actually is interesting. So we have Green Bay this week, but it's in Seattle. Historically, we play them well in Seattle.
Yep.
Right. We also have you guys in Seattle, which we play you guys well in Seattle. Then we have to travel to Chicago, where we are terrible on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the Rams in LA, but I mean, LA is a home field for everyone except the Rams. So
I think you split with us and the Packers. I think you get one. I don't know if you get both.
Yeah.
And I think you beat Chicago because Chicago, even though you've struggled,
The Seahawks beat Chicago.
even though you've struggled on the road, your defense is going to give Caleb Williams problems.
So the thing is we're actually better on the road this year.
Yeah.
We're better on the road than we are at home this year. We have just historically struggled in Chicago.
Yeah. You'll win this year just because your defense will give Caleb Williams problems.
The defense has been really good the last 3 weeks.
I mean, look at yesterday, for example. The end of the first half, the 49ers had 319 yards of offense, and the Bears had 4.
Yeah.
The Bears had 4 yards of offense in the first half, and Caleb Williams actually had negative 17 yards passing.
Yeah, the Bears did not come to play.
They had negative 17 yards passing in the first half. That's almost damn near impossible to do.
Yeah, I was loving that because I think Caleb Williams had like 1.2 points, I think, in the first half, fantasy-wise.
That would be hilarious. to beat all of the North and then somehow lose to the Rams would suck.
Yeah, like you'll have no.
I'm talking history.
Yeah,
they struggle going to Chicago. Like that's not scared. That's a fact.
You will have no. I mean, I'm not going to say any game is easy in the NFL because as you've seen this year, like there's no easy game this year.
Yeah,
but
the Panthers have won some games. That's crazy.
You guys shouldn't have an issue going 2-2. Because like I said,
you know how bad I wanted Carolina to beat Philadelphia last night. I was like, God, I think if Carolina could just win this, Monday's going to be so freaking phenomenal.
No, see, that's the thing is if they go 2-2 and one of those wins is the Rams, that's the recipe to win the division.
Do you need to beat the Rams though if you beat the Packers, the Vikings, or the Bears, any one of those two, and then the Rams lose to San Francisco on Thursday? Do you actually need to beat the Bears if the Rams lose to San Francisco on Thursday?
Yes. And the reason for that is because the Rams beat us earlier in the year.
Okay.
So they really need to beat the Rams, or they have to be a full game ahead.
Or the Rams have to just lose 2 to get to 8 losses. And then if you go 2-2, then that puts you at 7 losses.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't, I,
We have to be a game ahead, or at a minimum, beat the Rams.
I wasn't sure if that mattered if the Rams would lose on Thursday to San Francisco. I do think the Rams are going to lose on Thursday. Just because Kyle Shanahan
Steve-O? Yeah.
Just because Kyle Shanahan typically has a lot of success against the Rams. Like, that's one of the teams that Sean McVay has historically struggled against is San Francisco, and being that this is a short week,
Yep.
I think the Rams do lose to San Francisco on Thursday.
Well, and San Fran's coming off a just an absolute beatdown of the Bears.
And freaking Brock Purdy looked like an MVP yesterday.
Dude.
I don't know what the hell got into him yesterday.
Man, well, and the defense, right? Like the defense came to play because the Bears couldn't do anything.
Like, Kittle looked like the Kittle of old. Purdy looked like an MVP going 25 at 28 for like 350. Yeah. Like, holy Jesus.
And it's funny because I really thought San Fran was going to struggle because they had both of their running backs hit IR. And
played well.
And then, of course, they have another one that went down during this game.
Isaac Guerrero, yeah.
I guess at the running back position, you guys are like scouting local high schools or something. Like,
well, Isaac Guerrero, though, even at the beginning of the year, Jordan Mason missed like 2 games early in the year. I think it was like at week 3 and week 4 he missed because he had a sprained ankle. Guerrero played both of those games, and he had almost 300 yards rushing in both of those starts. So yeah. Guerrero has played quite a bit of games, and he's played well when he's gotten the opportunity.
No, for sure.
Huh.
Yeah. No, it's they just injury bug ended this season for them. It's going to be interesting to see what it is they do moving forward with the Purdy contract looming. It does really sound like they are going to sign him.
Yeah.
Right. To a big deal. So then
there's really only one name that you're looking at, and it's the one that we don't know if he's ever going to be able to play football at the level he played again.
Well, I mean, of course.
Christian McCaffrey is ultimately going to be the decision that allows them to get Purdy or not. Because if you keep McCaffrey, if you keep Debo, if you keep Kittle and Ayuk, I don't know how you're going to pay Purdy.
No, you got to trade McCaffrey because someone will take a flyer on him, hoping.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to trade him. I think you just release him, take the cap hit depending on what the cap hit is, and then somebody signs him for cheap.
Well, but if you trade him, then they absorb the cap.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is you don't want to. It doesn't do you any good to get rid of him and then still eat the cap.
That's the only reason why I think it might.
So that someone else takes the money.
That's why I think they might have to get rid of him because knowing how injured he's been, I don't know if a team trades to take that contract, knowing that they may not
give you much, right? Like they won't give you much, but someone would take it.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to keep Purdy over McCaffrey. Like you said, with all the injuries that McCaffrey has, it just wouldn't be prudent for them to keep paying him and then not pay Purdy.
And Jordan Mason's proven that Jordan Mason can handle the top running back load, and he was a rookie this year, so the guy's going to be making next to nothing for the next 2-3 years as a rookie on his rookie deal.
What's the timeline on the ACL? Is that 6 months?
It's typically 8 to 12, but
yeah, I was going to say
it's more like 9 months because you miss the entire whenever you have the surgery, you miss the next 6 months and you start working out after that point. So you're looking at probably for Jordan Mason June, which is basically when minicamp starts, is when he'll start working out, and then he'll be ready to go by training camp. Typically, depending on how bad it is, I guess.
As long as you don't have any setbacks or anything like that, yeah, you should be fine.
Yeah, well, that's why I say it's usually about a year before you're like.
It's about a year until you're 100. It's a year until you're about 100%.
Exactly.
But like in terms of like playing wise, it's typically about 9 months until you're cleared to like start playing again. But you're not going to be 100% until about 12 months.
Yeah, you're usually on a pitch count.
Yeah.
You know, like you'll get on the field a little bit.
But you're typically at like a 15 carry limit, or if you're a wide receiver, you're typically at like a 40 to 45 snap limit for like the first 2 months after you come back.
Exactly. Yeah.
I got a fun stat of the day that I just found out this morning, and I kind of laughed.
Well, perfect. Let's wrap the show up on that. What's the stat of the day?
Who are the only 2 quarterbacks since 2000 to start 11 or 2 or better in their first season after changing teams?
After changing teams?
Yep. I'll give you 2 clues. One is playing right now.
I'll say Mayfield's one of them.
Nope. And they both played for the same team.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Think of who's 11. Think of who's 11 and 2 this year.
Well, I mean, so what? Darnold has to be one of them,
Darnold's one.
Yeah, about to say. Yeah, that makes sense.
and the other one's not playing now.
Not playing. Nobody played for the same team.
Was Favre 11-2?
Favre was 11-2 his first year in Minnesota.
Wow.
After leaving the Jets.
Okay. God, Favre was definitely not on my radar. I didn't realize he was
Because
11.
Minnesota went 12
I,
and
I guess I didn't remember them being 11-2.
Minnesota went 12-4 in Brett Favre's first year in Minnesota. They ended up with a 2 seed that year because the Saints went 13-3. But
Yeah, I guess
Minnesota,
yeah, huh?
because
Yeah, I
Minnesota,
guess I didn't remember them being 11-2 to start.
Minnesota started the year 6-0 that year. Then they lost 2 in a row to get to 6-2. Then they got to 11-2, lost 2 in a row to go to 11-4 before winning the last week.
Definitely not that. Yep. Both were Jets as well. I mean, true. On that note, if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you. And of course, if you are watching on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. Otherwise, we will see you all tomorrow, except Jay. He's cheating on us as usual.
You may not want to show us those tomorrow, anyways. If the Bengals beat the Cowboys,
Yeah, that's true. If the Cowboys lose, we won't see him the rest of the week.
Hold on. Stat guy. Don't put me in your category. Just because you jump off your team for a little while and then you come back.
I criticize my team. I don't jump off the plane.
I'm gonna take this because you open up a can of worms. You gotta let me fucking finish that shit. I'll come through this fucking.
Except we don't have time. You'll have to do it on Wednesday if you show up. Take it easy, everybody.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live